Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Osasu Show. October 7, 2017 is World Cerebral Palsy Day. It is a social movement and a day to celebrate and affirm the lives of 17 million people worldwide living with cerebral palsy, also known as CP. The project was launched in 2012 by Cerebral Palsy Alliance in Australia and United Cerebral Palsy Organization. Cerebral palsy is considered a neurological disorder caused by non-progressive brain injury. It's malformation that occurs during pregnancy while the child's brain is under development. Cerebral palsy primarily affects body movement and muscle coordination. With the exception of children born with a severe case, cerebral palsy is considered to be a non-life-threatening condition. Most children with cerebral palsy are expected to live well into adulthood. On today's episode of the Osasu Show, we'll be discussing with Her Excellency Barrister Amina Oyiza Bello, the wife of the Executive Governor of Kogi State, who has a child living with cerebral palsy. She will be telling us about some of the stigma she had to face and ways she's been able to overcome and empower her child into greater living. Don't go anywhere, and when we return, the exclusive interview with Her Excellency. Welcome back to the Osasu Show. With me is Barrister Amina Oyiza Bello. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Can you tell me, thank you so much. Can you tell me some more about your foundation and what inspired you to create it?
Okay, Hayat Foundation is actually a brainchild of mine, and the reason for it, or the inspiration behind it, has to do with my journey raising my son Hayatullah Honora Isabella, who was born with cerebral palsy, and the challenges there.
Okay, so your foundation focuses on cerebral palsy awareness. So what kind of messages are you, or have you so far, been able to deliver to the public?
Actually, even though we advocate for cerebral palsy, I would say we also appeal to people with special needs in general, which also encompasses the disabled community. Basically, what we've done is sensitization for the most part. Like we appeal to school owners to be more engaging when it has to do with having children with disability vis-a-vis special needs in the mainstream school. If you're very observant, you notice that our mainstream schools, whether private or public schools, tend to segregate amongst the children. And for us at Hayat Foundation, we feel it's not the way to go. If children are the leaders of tomorrow, it is important to have both special children as well as regular kids in the same environment. And what this does is that it fosters unity, empathy within them, so that the regular kids, being the leaders of tomorrow, should they find themselves in position of authorities, they will keep on, making laws and making our society much more, friendly and accepting to the special needs community in general. So to answer your question precisely, we've done so much. Top on it is the borehole we did, for some villages in Kogi State, and we go to the suburb. The reason for this is that we discover that a lot of people have challenges of water, and we felt the need to show to our society that something good does come out from the special needs community to able-bodied men and women, and that has really gone a long way to, reduce the sufferings of our women in that regard. We've also donated them educational materials in the area of school, and then we donated chairs and tables and other writing materials, still to make life easy, for people in that area. And I've visited a couple of special needs homes, still in the suburb, because the challenge with the special needs community is that most times nobody really wants to go there, and when you visit these homes, some of these children, you see them in a very, very appalling state, and it's very important that here in Nigeria that we really begin to embrace these children because they are part and parcel of us.
I agree with you. Well, as First Lady of Kogi State, what have you done to ensure that schools are more accepting, in a sustainable way, giving of donations and alms to people with disabilities is laudable. However, we can approach this from a more sustainable perspective. So as First Lady, wielding the power of the seat of the First Lady, are there some things that you hope to do to ensure that schools have, build wheelchair accessible, entrances, and the teachers are trained on how to deal with students with cerebral palsy and other disabilities?
Yeah, we've done a lot in that regard. First of all, it's very important to note that Hayat Foundation is a Pan-African initiative, and we would never intended restricting it to just Kogi State or Nigeria. We want to appeal to the entire African community so that the whole mindset thing will begin to change. That said, in the area of schooling, what we did basically was working with His Excellency's blueprint team, especially as regards rehabilitation of the educational sector in Kogi State. And we ensure that every proposed building that is going to be renovated at one time or another, we ensure that they're all wheelchair accessible. And we've also gone further through Still Hayat Foundation. We're able to also donate wheelchairs, to some students, because we discovered that most of them, they come to school with either bathroom slippers, on the floor, and we felt, no human being should be treated that way. So we've gone on to donate wheelchairs in that regard to also help. But in general, most importantly, we've been advocating overall that our schools, be it public or private schools, become more wheelchair accessible, and not just schools, all public institutions, And this also includes our religious institutions like the churches and mosques. If you're very observant, you notice that most of them are not wheelchair accessible. And if this mindset change doesn't even start from our faith organization, then it means as a people we are still living in denial. In as much as I believe that there are some cases that need exorcism, for the most part, some of these challenges are medically induced, and we have to begin to manage them and treat them accordingly.
Okay, Your Excellency, World Cerebral Palsy Day is celebrated or recognized worldwide on October 6th. This year falls on Friday, October 6th, 2017. What are some of your expectations of Nigerians towards the special needs community? And how can people who are watching reach out to those around them who obviously have the special needs that needs to be met?
My appeal to the general public will be on the 6th, and every other day, if you ask me, is to reach out by just maybe doing wider consultation, because I'm sure in your locality, it could be your neighbor, could be your friend in the mosque or in the church, one way or another, I certainly would see people with disability and people with cerebral palsy, because 17 million populace of the whole world have one form of cerebral palsy or another, and about 170 million of the entire world population do have one form of disability or another. So to this extent, I would say just go out there, show love to them, show empathy, And maybe for parents with children with cerebral palsy, why not just go help babysit on that day? Just organize anything good, show empathy, be a shoulder to lean on for parents, and just show love and compassion. And I think that's what makes the world go around. And I think if we imbibe this culture, not just for the 6th of October, but for every other day of our life, I think it will make life a whole lot easier and to make the world a better place. And together we can be the change that we want to see.
We see a lot in Nigeria, in most African countries, when a child is born with a disability, they're branded as some spiritual attack, or because of the archaic mentality, the inexposure to medical facilities and ways of dealing with these issues. So what was your experience giving birth to a child with cerebral palsy, and how were you able to overcome that backlash from society?
It wasn't easy, I won't lie. Some women have the belief that if you carry a child or you touch a child that has one form of, say, has CP for instance, or has special need and you're pregnant, that the child you're carrying automatically, but those are just facetious belief, and it doesn't work that way. In a literal term, it's an injury to the brain, and depending on the side of the brain that is affected, it could lead to speech impairment or mobility. So for the motor function of the child, as it were. But for the most part, it doesn't affect their sense of reasoning. Like my son, he's a very, very happy, vivacious person. He loves to play, he loves to laugh, he loves animals, and most of them loves plants and nature. They love art, they love music. So when you talk to them, they hear, they understand, they comprehend everything you're saying. The only challenge they have is that they may not be able to respond as swiftly as you may want them to, or some of them may not be able to respond at all, or they may not be able to move from point A to point B. So these are the reasons why we advocate for early intervention, so that with regular physiotherapy, regular speech therapy, they'll keep on improving and be able to communicate better as they grow older. We went through that phase, but I would say my family, particularly my husband, really helped, in dealing with that stigma, as it were. And he supported me in every way possible, mentally, physically, financially, he was always there. And of course, my children, my extended family is at large, because raising a special child is not always easy. Especially as they grow older, you need people to help in carrying them, and all that. So it wasn't easy, but I was fortunate enough, I would say I really am. I'm very fortunate enough to have families that have been very, very supportive, in helping me raise my son. I think that helped me a great deal in finding closure, and we're also able to start the intervention early, especially in the area of physiotherapy, to ensure that we're able to get him to become as independent as possible.
Were there facilities on ground in Nigeria that helped you?
That was the most challenging part, I must say. In fairness to our people, I would say they didn't know any better. We had to travel around the world because we just didn't fit in. We felt odd, I must say. Like when Hayat was about 3 years old, when people see me that backing him or carrying him on wheelchair, it doesn't, on his walker, it doesn't just add up.
They didn't understand.
Coupled with the fact that, as you know, here in Nigeria, most places are not wheelchair accessible. So that kind of compounded the whole thing. So we kept on moving from one country to the other, trying to seek for solution. But eventually we went to America, to Kennedy Krieger, to be precise. And there, I would say, I personally found closure, because one, we're able to get all forms of equipment, even customized to suit his age bracket. And back home, we couldn't even get a wheelchair for him. All the wheelchair we saw were all adult wheelchair. Wow. So, and we're able to get him standing aid, walking aid, even his bicycle. Like every child, he wants to go on a ride with his siblings, but we couldn't get a bike that suits him. So all this were all addressed when we eventually, traveled out. But I felt as a person, that we cannot all run away from our country. Home is home. And if we really want to fix Nigeria, somebody has to start it. And I found my calling, and there was no better place to be than to come back home and begin to address all these challenges, especially as regards other mothers or parents alike that are not as fortunate, as I am, to be able to travel out and get these things for my children.
On that note,
for my son especially.
On that note, Your Excellency, let's take a short break, and when we return, we'll have more with Her Excellency.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Welcome back to the Osasu Show. Here with me is Barrister Mrs. Amina Oyiza Bello. Thank you so much for sitting tight. So before we went on break, we talked about what the Hayat Foundation has been able to accomplish. The launch of the Hayat Foundation is on October 13th. Can you tell me more about what the public should expect from this launch?
Okay, basically it's going to be still more on advocacy in general, and we'll still cut across the various sectors of the society, from the religious community to traditional leaders and politicians, private organizations, and civil society group. That said, Hayat Institute at this point is going to be like an umbrella body for special needs in general. So our intention is to create an institute where we'll have school for people with cerebral palsy, school for people with autism, school for the blind, school for the disabled, and we'll have a world-class library where they can access unique materials that will tailor to suit their individual needs. Also intend to have a hospital facility also, because as you know, raising special children or working with them, we certainly need to work with a hospital. So additionally, our aim also is to ensure that NCE holders that wants to become special needs equipped, can come for a postgraduate degree in that area. Could be in the area of physiotherapy, or occupational therapy, behavioral therapy, or any form of therapy per se, so that as time goes on, the norm that we seem to have, whereby school will say to you, oh sorry, we don't have the manpower, or we don't have the technical know-how, will begin to stop, or at least reduce to its barest minimum. So these are part of the things we intend to achieve there. Then of course we'll have our hostel facilities for parents that wants to come with their children, for parents that wants to have their child in the boarding facilities. We're going to have caregivers to also attend to these children, so that parents will begin to find closure, moving forward.
What's the time frame for this infrastructural development you intend to embark on?
I must say it's going to be a little bit time consuming. It may take a shorter time if we're able to get the finance that we need on time. But so far, the launch is going to be focused on fundraising as well. Okay. So basically what we're able to raise will determine the duration it will take. But for us, hopefully we intend for it to kick off within the next 1 to 2 years at the max. But we also intend to do it in phases because we want to put everything together before we start operation. It could take longer, than planned. So we intend to divide it into 3 phases, and the moment we're able to conclude the first phase, then we can start.
So which of these infrastructure developments are on the top of the list? Or do you want to start with the school or the healthcare facility? Which one is?
We intend to start with the school.
Okay.
Well, of course, with the school, we certainly have to also have a world-class library. But, like I said earlier, if you're going to work with the special needs community, certainly there has to be a hospital. So basically, we're not going to go all the way, but we'll certainly have a clinic at the start while we may delay the main building, or we need to have a place called hospital in the case of any emergency or something.
In terms of training, because we've seen a lot of abuse stemming from teachers and caregivers who do not know how to take care of children with disabilities. So do you intend to provide any training for the facilitators who would be working closely with these children?
Well, of course, the major challenge I would say we face in Nigeria is the fact that most teachers, as it were, does not have the required training. So in this regard, we intend to work with Kennedy Krieger and John Hopkins, whom we've written, and they've promised to help us in the area of manpower, and the technical know-how. So we intend for them to help train our people here, in the area of physiotherapy, occupational therapy, behavioral therapies, and the likes. So with time, we'll begin to have people here that can do all these things without having to travel out for them.
Have you thought of sponsoring a bill in regards to the non-discrimination against children with cerebral palsy and other disabilities in your State House of Assembly?
Oh, of course. I must say that's top on our agenda at the moment. As I speak with you, we are putting a bill together in that regard. And what we intend to achieve at the end of the day is to ensure that certain quota is given to the disabled community in general, or also special needs in general, which also encompasses the disabled community. And I think by the time the bill is passed into law, the discrimination would reduce, to its barest minimum. Because when there's an enabling law in place, it will be easier for parents to seek redress, in the event that their rights are trampled upon. So we're aware of the fact that there's a need to put that law in place, and that's why we're working hard in ensuring that we'll sponsor this bill.
Your Excellency, that's truly laudable. History will be very kind to you if you're able to get that done, and I'm sure the 35 other states would also replicate that as well, if that's successful. So that's good. I'm really happy to hear that. Finally,
but it's also important to note at this point that the Child Rights Act has been passed by His Excellency, the Governor of Kogi State, and part of the sections in that law does address some of these challenges, even though it didn't tackle some areas, and these are the areas we intend to address with the bill I'm sponsoring at the moment.
Awesome. Finally, how can parents who have children that are also suffering from special needs of any kind, how can they reach out to the Hayat Foundation? And as you said, especially those who don't have the privilege of traveling outside of the country to seek better help, how can they reach out to your foundation, and what can they do with the little that they have to ensure that their lives, the children, giving equitable healthcare and a chance at good living?
So parents can reach us via our website, as I said earlier, www.hayatfoundation.org.ng, and therein parents will see our various portals, our phone numbers, our various addresses, and we'll take it from there.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us on today's program.
Thank you for having me, Osasu. I really, really appreciate your gesture.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. So that's it for today's program. To find out more information, check out the website on the screen. Don't forget to follow our social media handles at The Osasu Show, at Osasu Ibinajan, at TOS TV Network, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'll see you same time, same place next week, and until then, take very good care of yourself. God bless you.